Fire near Port Lincoln downgraded to watch and act as CFS continue to control fire zone. A large stubble fire fanned by strong winds threatened Port Lincoln on Monday, in the first major inferno of the season. More than 100 firefighters battled the blaze, which took hold at Duck Ponds about 6 kilometers northwest of the Eyre Peninsula town, just after 4 p.m. A CFS spokeswoman said an emergency warning was downgraded to a watch and act message about 8 p.m. on Monday. It is looking slightly better, but there is still a watch and act message, so there is still a risk in the area, the spokeswoman said. The fire had burnt 218 hectares of land by 9 p.m. on Monday. Water bombers had made 51 drops on the fireground. The spokeswoman said no homes had been confirmed destroyed in the fire, but a rapid damage assessment team would make assessments on Tuesday morning. A total of 45 people will travel to Port Lincoln from Adelaide, including firefighters and an incident management team, to assist crews on the ground. SAW Power Network spokesman Paul Roberts said more than 500 customers were still without power at 9 p.m. on Monday. He said other properties would not be restored until crews got access to the fireground from the CFS. "We'll restore power as soon as we can, safely," Mr. Roberts said. "But it's quite likely there has been damage to power lines and infrastructure. We won't know until we get there." About 15,000 customers had been affected by the earlier power outages. Check the outage map for updates here. Truck drivers are advised to avoid Port Lincoln due to road restrictions and ongoing firefighting activities. An evacuation point was set up at Curtain Point Bowling Club for residents to check in, seek shelter and access support services. CFS State Duty Commander Nick Stanley told the Advertiser the fire took hold when winds were gusting at between 65 km per hour and 90 km per hour. He said crews, assisted by 8 water bombers, would work through the night but would need conditions to abate before they could get on top of the fire. "It's going to be complicated with the higher speeds," Mr. Stanley said. "The greatest challenge is the wind at this point in time." Mr. Stanley said the cause of the blaze was unknown and would be examined by CFS and SAW police investigators. "We've been telling the community, we've had a dry winter in a lot of areas and that it would not take much for a fire like this to take hold, and unfortunately we have seen that," he said. As NSW prepares for another catastrophic fire danger day, South Australia was reminded of the dangers that lie ahead this summer. Port Lincoln resident Chris Coote said conditions were similar to the December 2009 fire, which destroyed several properties and burnt 650 hectares. This fire is in the same vicinity. The wind is gusting up and then it's dying off. "It's very similar to that day," Mr. Coote said. "The marina area is copping a lot of smoke. There are heaps of water bombers just going one after another at the moment. There would have to be houses in the line of fire." ANZ Agricultural Business Manager Justin Richardson, who lives about 7 kilometers north of Port Lincoln near Winter Hill, said his house was definitely in the smoke zone. "My prediction from looking around is that there is definitely a home gone. If it's not controlled there will be a lot of homes gone," he said. Mr. Richardson said he traveled into Port Lincoln to check on the welfare of friends. "As we were coming in we couldn't smell anything until we hit New West Road. The wind is still very strong and just gusting around," he said. Mr. Richardson said his friends were ready to leave if necessary. "They've packed up ready to go, just ready to evacuate," he said. Curtain Point resident Jenny Ambrose said the fire was getting close to Lincoln Gardens Primary School, on Western Approach Road, where she works as a librarian. "It hope it doesn't burn my school down. You can't see Boston Island or the ocean, which is scary," she said. Ms. Ambrose said the fire was just 10 kilometers from her house about 5:30 p.m. "It looks big on the map, but it's all pretty close. We can see bits of white stuff, which is ash," she said. "If it gets to us it will burn our house down because we've got so much timber, trees and leaves."